Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, the 4th of July. Today is the day that the United States celebrates Independence Day. And many here in the United States still continue to face discrimination and injustices, just as many around the world are not free. And so my hope and prayer on this Independence Day is that I think of the quote of Nelson Mandela. He said, after the fall of apartheid, when South Africans, for the first time, Black South Africans, for the first time on the horizon in decades, saw liberation and freedom on the horizon, he said, none of us are free until Palestinians are free. So I hold that in my heart on this Independence Day, where I have so much gratitude for so many things here in the United States, while also wanting our country to do so much better. Today is day 637 since the October 7th attacks in the south of Israel in 2023. Could we be on the precipice of a ceasefire? We could be. President Trump is saying we could hear within 24 hours or less. So there might be at least temporary good news on the horizon. Any time that bombs stop falling, I think that is good news. Hamas has responded to the current ceasefire proposal in a positive spirit. It was reported today. This is the U.S. brokered Gaza ceasefire proposal that's on the table. Hamas has entered into talks on the deal. Israel has already accepted the proposal. This was proposed by Trump and his team. Trump earlier announced a final proposal for what would be a 60-day ceasefire in what is now 21 months of war. I keep saying 18 or 19 months. Like, I don't want to count because, we're counting the days, and it's 637 days, 21 months of war between Israel and Hamas. What's left of Hamas, stating that Trump anticipated a reply from parties in coming hours. There are still concerns over the Rafah border. The Rafah border, according to the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, should be under the control of Egypt. The Philadelphia corridor has been occupied and taken over by the Israeli military in past months. And so there's still concerns over the Rafah crossing and Israeli withdrawals and what that timetable will be. Netanyahu has demanded for Hamas to disarm, which could complicate ceasefire talks. And Netanyahu is on his way to the United States for a meeting at the White House on Monday. Now, everything I've read has seemed to indicate if a ceasefire moves forward, it would be a 60-day deal, but it would allow for Netanyahu to go back to his war on Gaza after the 60 days are up. There's nothing about this deal that's permanent. More of the details, the 60 days is expected to see 5 separate releases of hostages, dead and living. Israel reported on Thursday this past week that on day 1, 8 living hostages would be released. On day 7, 5 bodies would be released. On day 30, another 5 bodies. On day 50, 2 living hostages. And on the last day, 8 more bodies. If this process is completed and 60 days of ceasefire is manifested, there would still be 22 hostages left in Gaza. At least 10 of them would still be presumed to be alive. The hostages include the bodies of at least 28 confirmed to be dead. 20 are still believed to be alive. There are grave concerns for the well-being of 2 others, according to Israeli officials. Now, Trump has said the response to the Gaza ceasefire deal could come in 24 hours, that Hamas has said to show flexibility on the issue of disarmament, that it might be somewhat symbolic, but we'll wait and see what happens in that regard. A ceasefire could come none too soon. We at Churches for Middle East Peace are a part of a group called IDA, the Association of International Development Agencies in Jerusalem. They reported from OSHA, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, on July 2nd that WASH, the water system, is on the bridge or verge of a systematic failure due to the fuel blockade. There's not enough fuel to run the pumps for there to be water spread throughout the Gaza enclave for the more than 2 million people there. There is so much infrastructure destruction and displacement. Only 40% of water production facilities remain functional. 93% of households have water insecurity. Families are relying on trucks that are bringing in water for their very survival. On average, there have been 2 security incidents per day in recent weeks involving water trucks being forcibly stopped by desperate communities that are redirecting those trucks to fill private tanks. These incidents highlight growing despair, the erosion of public order around specifically water distribution. We see this around food as well. There are no injuries to drivers reported thus far, but the situation's volatile and it's getting worse. It's escalating. So in terms of action and reporting, all incidents are reported to WASH, and then there's all these details and statistics. I'd point you to the OSHA website for the OPT, the Occupied Palestinian Territories, for more details. Al Jazeera had a few updates in the last 24 hours. Israel has issued new forced displacements for parts of Khan Yunis in South Gaza. There was recently, last week, a displacement order in North Gaza. There's now one in the south, as attacks across the besieged territory have killed dozens of Palestinians. The number of aid seekers killed since May 7th has risen. We knew it was over 600. It's now 613 people killed while seeking aid. Israel's war on Gaza has killed at least 57,268 people, and those wounded are 135,625. And these numbers are a vast understatement. They don't include bodies under the rubble. They don't include people who were killed indirectly, wounded, and then died in subsequent days. The estimated number of people killed in Israel on October 7th was just approximately 1,200 people. More than 240 were taken captive. Yesterday in the weekly briefing, I was asked how many operatives within Hamas have been killed, and I wanted to just give an update on that. Based on information, the IDF reported killing 17,000 Hamas operatives. The numbers range between 17,000 and 20,000 Hamas operatives. But additionally, the IDF claims to have killed about 1,000 Hamas terrorists on the day of October 7th, where the Israel attacks took place. This is a direct quote from a report. It's important to note these figures are based on IDF reports, but some reports that have counted up the numbers of specific reporting that's public from the IDF have said the numbers are much closer to half of that, more like 8,500 people. Prior to October 7th, there were roughly 20 to 25,000 Hamas militants that were active in Gaza. So the number could be anywhere between 8,500 and, as I said, the IDF reports twice that number. So that report is called After a Year of War. This is from October a year ago in 2024, reporting on how Hamas's military has been weakened, but it was far from eliminated. Again, it said that the number of eliminated Hamas fighters was closer to 8,500. This quoted the members of the Hamas military wing, the Al-Qassam brigades, as being between 25,000 and 30,000. So that is an update in terms of the destruction of Hamas and the attempts by Netanyahu to eradicate Hamas, which many in the Israeli military have said is not possible because it's an ideology, as have many others argued. There also was new analysis on Sky News that shows that deaths in Gaza are increasing when aid distributions are happening from the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. And you know, I was reading this article about this new analysis from Sky News, and we've seen these deaths around aid distribution. But Johnny Moore is quoted as saying, he's the chair of the board. He's a Christian. He was on Trump's faith-based team during Trump's first presidency. He says almost anything that happens in the Gaza Strip is going to take place in proximity to something, making reference to how populated it is. Our effort is actually working despite the disinformation campaign. It's very deliberate in an attempt to shut down our efforts. We just want to feed Gazans. That's the only thing we want to do. And I can't help but think Johnny Moore is acting as a puppet. The former director of the Gaza Health or Humanitarian Foundation quit because he said he couldn't be an agent, of a military enterprise. The GHF is not working, and we just need to be very, very clear about that. I would point you to the statement CMEP published alongside of Doctors Without Borders and many other international aid agencies, calling those humanitarian distribution centers death traps. On days when the GHF conducts 2 distributions or fewer, health officials report an average of 48 deaths and 189 injuries in the Gaza Strip. But with 5 or 6 GHF distributions, authorities report the death toll to be 3 times as many casualties. There also was a report by Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, about how 5 months after the start of Israeli military operations, humanitarian needs in the West Bank have escalated because 40,000 people have been displaced from Jenin in the north of the occupied West Bank. I wanted to call your attention to MSF's report, Doctors Without Borders. In Iran, the Institute for the Study of War gave a few updates. Senior Iranian leaders have continued to underscore the fact they will not stop uranium enrichment, and the U.S. will have to convince Iran that the U.S. is not going to resort to force with Iran again. It's unclear what will be required to convince them. Israel struck an Iranian facility on June 16th that's tied to Iran's nuclear and chemical weapons programs. The Israeli strikes probably destroyed areas used for plastics explosive productions. I'll note that there was a missile scare in Israel again on Thursday, where there were reports that missiles were coming in. It was a false alarm, but there are concerns that things maybe have not settled and the Iran-Israel ceasefire might not hold. Likely, Iranian-backed Iraqi militias launched one drone, probably targeting U.S. forces at the Erbil airport in Iraq. No militias claimed the attack. The attack on the drone is not related to what I was mentioning about the alarms in Israel. I wanted to take a minute and give U.S. legislative updates. These are from the month of June. On June 13th, repeal Syria Caesar Civilian Protection Act. Representatives Wilson, Jayapal, Panetta, Stutzman, Correa, and Bergman introduced a bipartisan piece of legislation called Repeal the Syria Civilian Protection Act of 2019. The act aims to repeal sanctions on Syria that are due to expire in 2029. You heard that there was an executive order where Trump did essentially just that. At least that's my understanding, just in the past few days. On June 16th, the Kane War Powers Resolution, I reported on that. It did not pass. It was seeking to demand that President Trump and the administration get congressional approval before going to war or declaring war on Iran. That did not pass. June 17th, the Massey-Hanna Bipartisan War Powers Resolution was the equivalent of that in the House, again seeking to call the war powers into effect. The Sanders No War Against Iran Act was brought forward on June 17th, declaring Congress has not declared war on Iran, thus no money should be appropriated to fund the war absent of explicit congressional approval. It said that any previous declaration may not be used as permission of war. The president might only use government funds in Congress. So that was legislation that was brought forward this month. If you have not taken the action alert on Churches for Middle East Peace's website in terms of our Letters for Gaza campaign, where we're partnering with other coalition partners to send letters to members of Congress calling for unrestricted humanitarian access to Gaza and a comprehensive permanent ceasefire, please do so. You can find more information about that on our website. I wanted to close with some words from Brother Francesco Iepo. He is the new Custos of the Holy Land. In this war-torn world, what message can St. Francis of Assisi and his followers bring, was a question that was posed to him as the Custos of the Franciscans, the Custos of the Holy Land. He said, I'm aware that it's one thing to say something in words and it's another to live it in daily life. When you're in difficulty, when you're under bombs, when you see injustice, when your heart breaks to see starving children, when you witness the atrocities committed by terrorists, even so, we are called to guard. This word returns again, a heart capable of seeing reality as Christ sees it. And therefore, we must see things without enemies. And that is not easy, without taking sides, but with a heart that never gives up on the idea that you can be my brother and I can be engaged in dialogue with you. That has to be a possibility for everyone. And I say this, I realize this may sound like beautiful theoretical words, but day-to-day life is another matter. We have to help each other cultivate this vision, the one that St. Francis had when he stood before the Sultan or before the cardinal delegate from whom he asked permission to leave the camp, a disarming gaze, because it was concerned for the good of the other, for the salvation of the other, even of the one who at that moment seemed to be the very enemy. And when asked if there were any words he would like to make his own to address the friars and those who love the Holy Land, he said, I take these words from the Franciscan tradition and the friars' presence in the Holy Land. Brothers and minuses, we must be witnesses of dialogue and peace. To conclude, I invite everyone not to forget to pray and beg for peace, not only for the Holy Land, but for the more than 50 conflicts currently taking place around the world. May this be an encouragement to us as we continue to seek peace and to beg for it to come. In the name of Christ, amen.